Hello again, everyone. I'm Lucas Berry, and you're watching Train Time on the River Network. You know, I'm down here in Thurmond waiting for a train, and I hope I get one sometime soon. But while I wait, it got me thinking about a time here when I was here pretty much all day, back in May 2023. And it just happened I came for one thing, 3 private cars on the rear of Amtrak 50. But what I got was much more than I ever could imagine. I got myself foreign power in the form of Union Pacific and Kansas City Southern locomotives pulling a train. I got a nice long empty coal train, as I've said before, I love empty coal trains. I got some locomotives you can't see here on RJ Thurmond anymore, and so much more. A few trains actually stuck up on me. So, with that in mind, let's talk about that day. Let's show you what all I got on this episode of Train Time. We'll start with the reason I came down here. 3 private cars on the rear of Amtrak 50. A private car is an old passenger car owned by an individual or company, and if you have them fit for service, they can hitch a ride on Amtrak. For a fee, of course, and they charge by a mile. The 3 cars on the train today are the Boston and Maine Salisbury Beach, a 1954 Pullman product, the Pennsylvania Railroad Colonial Crafts, another Pullman this time built in 1949, and the Norfolk and Western Lambert's Point, oldest of the bunch, built by Pullman in 1914. The Colonial Crafts has some interesting history. It was used by Richard Nixon during the 1960 campaign, and Elvis Presley used the car on his way home to Memphis from New Jersey after being overseas in the military. The Salisbury Beach and Lambert's Point found new homes not long after this video was shot, with both having been sold to the Reading and Northern Railroad in Pennsylvania for use on their excursion trains. After Amtrak passed, it wasn't that long before our next train showed up. A loaded grain train that I wish I remembered the symbol for so I could tell you where it came from and where it's going. But I got nothing. this one totally snuck up on me. So much so there wasn't even time to set up my tripod. This is L211, a local freight from Russell, Kentucky to Clifton Forge, Virginia. Moving eastbound this morning on the old C&O with an old YN2 AC44 leading to boot. Our first westbound of the day comes in the form of an empty coal train going back to mine. Again, I don't know the symbol, because I didn't write it down, so I can't say where the train is going, but I can say since these are CSX cars in the train, that they came out of Newport News, Virginia. I can say with reasonable confidence that it will load in West Virginia or Kentucky. There's always a chance it's an E895 for Princeton, Indiana, but given that's one of just several empty coal trains that run the C&O each day, I'd say it's probably a West Virginia or Kentucky train. Again, hard to really say for sure, but I'd say it's probably going to the Appalachian coal fields as opposed to Indiana. We leave the main line for a little bit and come across the river to Southside Junction, where R.J. Corman was cleaning up the remnants of a derailment just a few days before. It wasn't too serious, but a few loaded cars did jump the track here in Thurmond, and after they'd been re-railed they were taken to, I presume, Mount Hope, but I never did find out. You might notice the lead engine here, R.J. Corman 8569, is not what you see on mainline CSX trains, nor is it on R.J. Corman property here in West Virginia anymore. After the arrival of the new SD70Ms, R.J. Corman sent 8569, 7107, and 8718 to other properties it has around the country. '8718 and 8569 are SD40T-2s, built in 1978 and 1979 for Southern Pacific. That T indicates they are what's called a tunnel motor. The best way I can explain a tunnel motor is the air intake is different than on a standard diesel locomotive. On a regular SD40-2, the air intake is on the top of the engine, but a tunnel motor has the intake on the bottom to allow for clean air to come in while the engine is grinding away in tunnels, thus preventing overheating that had become a major problem for SP in the diesel era. This wasn't the first time Southern Pacific had to get creative with problems created by the many tunnels on its system, particularly the portion covering the original transcontinental route across the Sierra Nevada. In the steam era, SP rostered many types of cab-forward steam locomotives. These engines were built with their cabs in front of the boiler to prevent crews from getting choked by the smoke and soot blowing back in the cab. Back in the Appalachian Mountains, seeing these old engines switching no more than 10 cars is almost like a step back in time watching an old mine shifter work. Today we're so used to 100 plus car unit coal trains that load at one mine and go on their way, but mine shifters worked various mines on their assigned route, and it really wouldn't be unheard of to have a mine shifter having only about 10 loads or so at the end of the day. So this really was like stepping back into a time machine and watching the coal fields at work. As great as 3 private cars and old locomotives are, there was one train pretty much everyone on the old CNO wanted to see that day, a loaded ethanol train with Union Pacific and Kansas City Southern locomotives pulling. And after hours of waiting, we finally got it. Since I stayed all day, I got the westbound Amtrak to number 51. Here it is coming in for a station stop here in Thurmond, and it actually has some business to do here today. Now granted, since becoming a national park, this area has seen more visitors and therefore more people are riding Amtrak to stop in Thurmond, but it's still one of the least used stations on the system. So to see people getting on and off the train actually is kind of a big deal. At least it was to me at that time. There wasn't really anything special about the train this time, but it's still great to see Amtrak twice in one day. I've only done it a couple times. This was a real treat.
Here comes Amtrak, almost a half hour late.
The last train of the day looks like a mini ethanol train, but it's not. It's B444, an empty ammonia train from Rocky Mount, North Carolina to Lima, Ohio. Thank you so much for watching. If you like the show, I invite you to like our Facebook page. Check us out on Facebook and see what all we've got going on. We'll post them up our broadcast schedule. You can watch the episodes as they air. You can also check out our sports broadcasts when we're doing that. Some other fine programming as well. You can also do that on YouTube, New River Network, Roku and New River Network. You can watch watchnrn.com. It's a new website. It shows you exactly what's being shown on New River Network at that time. And you can watch that pretty much anywhere. And if you're feeling a little closer to home, you can watch us on cable here in Fayette County. Channel 4 on the Plateau, Channel 17 down in the Valley. So, for the New River Network, I'm Lucas Barry. Reminding you anytime, it's train time.